why the right rev of speed is such a good writer and breaks so many stories. I'm speaking, of course, of Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com, great motorsports writer for them. Just told me he went to the University of Ohio in Athens, which is a superior journalism department. I do know that. If not necessarily a superior football program. But with Solich, they've been doing a lot better, have they not, Jerry Bonkowski?
They have been, but they went through some lean years there for a while. I mean, it's been a long time since I graduated, but it's good to, as an alum, to see them, back on the right path. And you remember back in the day, they used to have one heck of a basketball program as well, too, and that's still, they've had some ups and downs there, too, as well. But, yeah, I'm a proud Bobcat, no question about it.
Well, let me then go to yesterday's race before we talk a little bit, maybe, and lead into what's going to happen in the NASCAR circuit at Watkins Glen. But you had Kyle Busch winning in overtime, and really, I thought by a substantial margin over Danny Suarez, and that was surprising to me because Suarez had, of course, won the pole, and he was right there. And as I was watching his commentators, this is the one, Suarez, this is where the big three trifecta is going to be broken up. And nope, after the Bubba Wallace wreck, basically was, all Busch again. Now, just a question, why are these three drivers so dominant, in your opinion, Jerry Bonkowski?
I don't know if anyone can answer that question, Mark, because, they're coming from this at three different ways. They all have sort of the same amount, almost the same amount of success individually. And, it's just like, well, if one can't get the job done this week, then another one takes his place. And, it just shows the success of them as a driver as well as their overall team, the way they're performing so well. And, admittedly, I've got to figure that there's some NASCAR fans out there that, are kind of tired of seeing Harvick, Truex, and Kyle Busch winning. But, that's kind of the nature of the sport. I mean, when you're hot, you're hot, and keep on going as long as you can if you're hot. So, I think that, as I said to you Friday on Friday's show, that I'm still not 100% convinced, though, that you're going to see Harvick, Truex, and Busch in the Final Four at Homestead. I think at least one of those guys, maybe even two, could dump out before that final round. And, the place where they would dump out at would be Phoenix, the final race, third round of the playoffs. So, even though they're doing great now, somewhere along the way, they're going to hit a bump. Well, all three of them are going to hit a speed bump, and, that could perhaps, put an ungood, or a bad ending, if you will, what's been a very good season up to this point.
This victory, and of course he won the Truck Series as well, so he's got 192 all-time victories if we're looking at Xfinity, Truck, Cup, that sort of thing. But in terms of Cup races, it tied him 49, 13th all-time with Tony Stewart. Where do you put it on the all-time list? I mean, if you had to hire a driver, and, of all time, and it could be Tony Stewart in his prime or Kyle Busch in his prime, Jerry, who do you hire to drive your race car?
Oh, man, that's a tough question.
Well, I mean, we got to ask that now because he just tied him here. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people asking, is 192 throughout all the series on a par with Richard Petty's 200, all in, Cup Series, but in an era of NASCAR in which, there were stock cars being run. I mean, that sort of thing. So he was beating convertibles at some. I'll do the initial question here. Stewart or Busch? When you look at their driving styles and you think of their makeup, who do you like? Who would you choose? He's going in the number one car of Jerry Bonkowski, sponsored by NBCSports.com.
Well, I mean, excuse me, from a sentimental standpoint, and just because I'm good friends with him, I would probably go with Stewart. But that being said, from a money standpoint, if the race is on the line, I probably would give Kyle an ever so slight edge over Tony. Tony could have won probably a good $5, maybe $10 races, over his career, if he's not been involved in, unfortunate incidents. I mean, there was, what race was where, I'm drawing a blank here, but there was one race he was leading. He tried to block some, I think it was Daytona or was it Talladega? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Daytona. He tried to block somebody down low and wound up getting in a wreck and ended his race. And he probably would have won. So, Tony, they're both kind of cut from the same mold. They're both very fiery. They're both very aggressive. They're both very, competitive. But like I said, I mean, from a sentimental standpoint, I picked Tony. From a money, in the bank kind of deal, I'd probably give Kyle just ever so slight edge.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, you mentioned that with Stewart, and I've always appreciated Stewart's really aggressive fashion and all that. And although I do maintain somewhat, off the track, from the interviews he's had and such, I've always thought, a good, upstanding. I've liked his persona off the track, that sort of thing, and I didn't find it to be quite as caustic as, say, Dale Earnhardt at times could be. I didn't find that. But Earnhardt at sometimes would just sort of, he was the intimidator, and that's a stupid question. He'd be that way at times. I found less of that with Stewart. But, so looking at Busch, if you would take one over the other and such. We've asked this question before, but let's just ask it again. When you try to compare, and I know it's difficult, but are you more impressed with 192 victories by Busch over the 3 circuits? I mean, one in the Truck Series this weekend, or would you be more impressed with Richard Petty doing it all on the highest level? Although, yeah, it's some of those long ago times. It's difficult to compare winning in 1959 against convertibles to today's NASCAR. I mean, which record are you more impressed by? 192 for Busch or 200 for Petty?
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The King's 200 will always be the biggest record. I don't care.
All right.
Kyle can go on and get 300, 350 wins, whatever the case may be. But until he gets, 200 Cup wins himself, there is no way he is ever going to be above Richard Petty, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinion. Because remember, Petty did this in an era. Yeah, the competition was a little bit, let's say, not as great because not everybody had the kind of equipment that the Petty Enterprises had. They didn't have the personnel that the team had. But at the same time, Richard had to win at a lot of different tracks. And, what was it? The one year he had, 27 wins or something like that? I mean, you don't win that many races without being very, very, very good and in very, very good equipment as well, too. So, I certainly respect what Kyle's doing. I certainly respect all the wins he's had. But, when you look at the overall comparison, we're talking about, 100, close to 150 wins in the Xfinity and Truck Series, which is a great achievement in and of itself, certainly. But, when you only, I'm not going to say only, but when you have 49 Cup wins versus Richard Petty's 200 Cup wins, that's where I make the distinction.
There you go. All right, so now that's my friend Robert Bright has got an answer right there. He may wish to send you an email or two, but here we go. We're talking to Jerry Bonkowski, NBCSports.com. I wanted to say, I was listening, Daniel Suarez made a strong run after winning the pole, but a lot of people said he's really got to win to be involved in this chase. He's too many points behind and all this. My question is this, and it's another thing. Are there too many drivers in the chase? Again, this is an old question that I may have asked you before, but I don't see, when I see, a driver competing for a championship that may have finished 16th this year, I'm thinking of the Washington Valor winning the Arena Bowl this weekend with a 2-10 regular season record. I'm like, are they really worthy? That sort of thing. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, should there be this many spots in the series in the playoff?
Well, I understand the reason why they went to 16 drivers. It does set up a very good 3-tier, if you will, playoff
I wonder, I mean, like I said, I think that we may be getting into a period of time where people are kind of realizing how these, huge playoff fields are just totally diminishing the regular season. I don't care if it's everybody with a winning record can play in a postseason tournament in basketball or a college bowl game, or if it's just 16 teams in the hockey playoffs and the same amount of rounds in the baseball playoffs or something like that. Again, this year has been about 3 drivers, and if a Suarez had won, okay, great, that's his moment in the sun. He'll have that. It's the event, if you will. But to try to say, well, this puts him on an even par is almost what you're trying to do. I just don't like it. I didn't like to see Bubba Wallace wreck so explosively. Is that the word I'm looking for? With 6 laps left, I think a lot of people feared for the worst. But then after this horrible wreck, he gets out. Oh, I'm fine. I just bit my cheek. I could have done that eating dinner. Let me ask you. This is the cars of today obviously so much safer, and the rules, the Hans devices, and you can't just pick and choose your safety equipment now and such. But tell me about. Do you think that in a previous era, I mean, certainly in the convertible era, yeah, that would have been horrible. But are we at a point in NASCAR? I mean, certainly it's got to be safer than it ever has been. But my question is, how safe is auto racing now? I guess significantly more. But could you see? Are the tragedies eliminated in your opinion, Jerry Bonkowski? That's my question.
Well, I don't know if you'll ever completely eliminate tragedies in any form of motorsports, or for that matter, any sports entirely. I mean, we've seen the athletes die in other sports, like
sure.
Like professional football. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I will say this, and you definitely said it the right way, Marky. I mean, motorsports today is as safe as it's ever been, and the one thing that I will give a lot of credit to NASCAR, IndyCar, NHRA, F1, pretty much any sanctioning body, is that they continue to strive to make even better safety advancements going forward. So, that's just because we haven't had a death in NASCAR in the last, since Dale Earnhardt Sr. in 2001, doesn't mean that, that we're sitting on our hands and, that we think that everything is, 100% perfect, because it's not. I mean, there's always tweaking, there's always changes, there's always advancements. I mean, we've seen, in recent years where guys, last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, guys have had some pretty bad wrecks. Had areas, tracks that maybe weren't even covered in paper barrier. Kyle Busch at the Daytona back in, 2015, I guess it was, in that Xfinity race. He came off the track, and unfortunately he found an area of the racetrack that did not have a safer barrier, and he got hurt really bad. So, there is always the element of injury out there. Thankfully, we minimize it, and there's such great care and things like that. But, again, this is a very volatile sport. It's a very high-speed sport, no matter if it's NASCAR, NHRA, or, IndyCar or anything like that. So, you'll never see these sanctioning bodies sitting on their thumbs. They're going to continue to improve that safety element as best they can, because, the worst thing that can happen is you lose a driver. I mean, that's the absolute worst thing.
I think that in today's era, if you lost one, there would be the long knives really coming out for the sport like we have not seen on a sport before or since, to be brutally honest with you here. It used to be, I can remember, somebody would pass away on the track and there would be that list, NASCAR drivers that have died. And it was just, every few years there was Tiny Lund or Adam Petty or whoever, J.D. McDuffie at Pocono, which we just ran. And I remember wondering, why in the world did they let a 50-year-old man who's never won a race, out on the Winston Cup circuit? Well, they're not doing that anymore. And I think that might be an improvement for the sport. And I'll just leave you there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say this real quick. I mean, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, there was a, we're talking grassroots level, so they certainly don't have the equipment that a lot of the guys in the Cup Series have, but we had another death in the grassroots level. We had a track, I'm drawing a blank, but
He's Jerry Bonkowski, the right rev of, I call him right rev of rev. Everybody else calls him the right rev of speed. They're not as alliterative as I am. Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. And by the way, coming up a little later on, Ken Hendricks of Knockallman Nation. Big week for the Braves. What with Sean Newcomb as well as Chipper Jones. He'll tell you all about it when we return on Tri-City Sports Now. Okay. How was that?